In this video I'm going to talk about how to address the mechanics of fighting between two characters. We'll look at a shot that I animated from a movie called I Am Number 4. I'll take a look at the shot here and I'll talk about some of the details. First thing I want to do is look at these creatures and decide what physical attributes I could use as weapons. So for this creature in the foreground, you can see he's got these big sharp teeth that stick out, and he's got these claws in the front that look like big sharp hooks. The other creature, he's got a big jaw, sharp teeth, he's got big powerful muscles like a lion, like an overgrown lion, and then he's got these big heavy paws with claws on them as well. So I'm going to use those as weapons. I want to also just be thinking about how their physical attributes are going to define their places of weakness as well. So in terms of the creature in the background, he looks like a lion to me. I know in watching reference of lions, you can see that they're always going for each other's necks. That's a place of vulnerability. And then also the belly, there's not any bone and not much muscle there to protect that part of the body. Same with this creature in the foreground. You can see he's got this long neck that looks like it doesn't have much to protect it, and same kind of thing, a belly that looks like it's somewhat vulnerable. I like to break down the kinds of attacks that a creature can do into two different categories. And one is striking and the other is grappling. And in the case of these alpacas, they're using their wrists to knock into the other one. They're using their bodies and their wrists. So this part, of course, of the arm is the elbow over here and the wrist is here like that, shoulders up like this. So both of these guys are clashing with each other by sort of punching with their wrists. Any given creature is going to strike another in large part based on how their body's built, but there's some commonality between creatures. So notice how when this alpaca is running, its feet are landing pretty close together on its foot contacts as it's moving through space, but right before this strike happens, notice how the feet go out away from one another and plant further here like this to create this strong base of power to push from. And then you can see also there's an anticipation in the spine here so that we have this strong base to push from, and then a quick reversal that happens here like that drives the chest upward into his opponent here. And then we follow through from there. Part of the reason why this moment of impact feels so dramatic is that we see the result very clearly. We see this cloud of dust come up from the alpaca in the back here. So it gives the sense of impact. And we also see what happens with the limbs through here of both of these creatures, right? This one follows through sharply. This one gets pushed out of the way. We feel the head get shaken here, nose goes down, and then bounces back up here. We feel the twist in the body happen in a really dramatic way. And then there's a little bit of a delay here as this alpaca in front is pushing in, and then a release of energy here as this guy begins to spin. And then we feel the secondary action of these legs all splay out like this. So it feels like this kind of percussive, explosive thing that happens with the body where the energy from one is being transferred into the other. All right, we have a completely different kind of creature here in this lion. Different physical attributes that it's going to use to attack with. It's got claws and it's got sharp teeth. So its attack's going to be more grappling centric, and you can see that's what these two lions are doing. But there's still some similarities. You notice in the run-up, the feet are closer into the center line of the body, and then right before this impact happens, this lion plants both feet further than hip width to make this nice, strong platform to attack to try and keep its balance, and you see the other lion doing the same thing. This brings up an important point that I want to highlight with regard to grappling, and that's this concept of creating space. In this case, this is going to happen by the way that these two lions are attempting to throw each other to the ground. So notice how when they first make contact, they're pretty well squared up to one another, and it almost looks like a mirrored image when they make contact, right? Both of their chests pointed almost directly at one another. Their hips pretty well squared towards one another like this. So if they just kept pressing against each other this way, neither of them would get anywhere. So something has to happen, something has to change. And so you'll notice what this lion here does is he shifts his hips around here, away from square, pushes off and turns here, his hip like this, takes this step back further with his other foot to get a wider base, and then rotates, pulls on this side and pushes here. and he's twisting this lion this way, but then he's also moving his hip out towards us. And what he's doing essentially is he's pressing here along the opposite shoulder and then quickly pulls his body out in the opposite direction. So he takes that pressure and releases it immediately and creates a space there for this lion to fall into. And that's why he falls to the ground here and the other lion is able to get on top. These lions aren't just trying to throw each other to the ground, they're also trying to pin them there. So this moment here where this lion throws the other one down, if he's able to actually get his head around and grab the neck of that other lion and hold his head in place, particularly hold the head of the other lion away from him, the lion on the bottom won't be able to turn into him and won't be able to get away. And that's extremely dangerous for the lion on the bottom. In that case, he doesn't really have much that he can do. He's really trapped. So you notice that this guy still has his head mobile. He's able to turn back into this lion. He's able to get his hand over the top of him, push him away, and then still keep his head free by way of creating space with this arm pushing against him. So in this moment here where he gets pushed down again, and then he pushes against the head of this lion like this, he's still creating some space there. So he's able to get his head free through here, and you can see how quickly he twists his entire body and gets around that way. That's what's keeping him safe. If he gets his head pinned in one position, then he's pretty much done for. If this guy's able to get his weight on top of him, get the force of gravity and the force of his own body weight there, and hold his head into position, it's extremely dangerous for the lion on the bottom. So let's go back to my shot and I'll talk about how I applied some of those principles that we just saw in the reference. So this collision that happens here, because of the way that the shot is composed, I've got a live action background, so I don't have any choice about how I'm composing the camera. So I've got this quick whip pan that happens through here, and I know that I have to have the character end up over here very quickly. So the fact that I don't see the contact happen, it's not a problem. I will see the result of that contact happen by the way that this character is sliding away from camera, the shake on the head that happens through here as it bangs against the ground, and then the elbow and wrist and shoulder as it crashes into the wall, and you get this sense of reversal on the hand and a bounce in and out of the shoulder. So I get enough of a feeling of impact with the ground and sliding away that it sells the collision that happens even though we don't see it. And then after that, the next thing I'm going to do is similarly to what we saw with the lions. I want to make sure that this swipe that happens with this hand feels very heavy and strong and violent. So I'm going to make sure that the body's involved, and you can see that I'm lifting up the hip and twisting it in opposition to the chest. The chest comes down like this as an anticipation and kind of holds in place and then rotates the opposite way as this swipes down and the hip rotates counter. So I get this nice twisting action in the body like this, so it really feels forceful. I'm also pushing off of this leg, so I have a strong basis to push from. So I'm using the whole body to catch this vulnerable part of this character over here, the neck, hold it and throw. And then again, I'm going to use the body to press down and have this very definitive pressing moment. So you can see I'm rotating the hip, I'm changing the line of action of the spine from this to this by rotating the hip down, so it feels like I'm getting this shape, pressing with this arm, pressing through the legs, so I get a nice strong dominant feel here. And then when this arm takes the weight, I'm going to push the shoulder up like this, so it really feels like I'm pressing down through this arm onto the head of this creature, and we can feel it in the head of the dominant creature as well. There's this push down to the head, so this, I want this to feel really definitive, like he's got him pinned down here, and there's nothing the creature underneath can do about it. You can see the way that the chest is still and the head is very still here. That's helpful as well. This guy is scrambling around, there's a lot of chaotic shaking that goes on, and then we have this moment of stillness here that feels very definitive. You can see behind the legs are still moving around a little bit. This guy is pinned by the chest and head, but there's still some movement back here because I'm going to suggest what happens next. One thing I want to point out incidentally is that this moment of pinning the head to the ground, I'm also like twisting into it here. It looks very violent and uncomfortable for this guy. That's a good thing in the sense that I want it to show a little bit of discomfort and pain. That helps to sell, again, the violence of this thing and the force of this character on top. But it also does another thing, and that is that if I can pin down this head so that it can only point in one direction, then I know that this creature can only go in that direction. He can only turn its body in the way that the head is pointing. So I can't just flip his hips over the other way if the head is pointing this way. A body with a spine like this just doesn't work like that. If I can't look the direction I'm going, I can't make my body go that way. So again, this helps to make this feel definitive. So that brings us to the second half of the shot. And this is the place where I want to utilize that principle of creating space. Because here you can see this character underneath is in a very dominated position. Doesn't have any ability to lift the other off the top of him until he gets his body underneath him so that he can push. And right now he's got his arms out in front of him and his hips on the ground and legs out in front of him here. So he's got nothing to push with. So the first thing I need to do is create space. So this shot is a cutaway shot, so I've already begun to do that when we cut back into it. And you can see I'm starting with the hips up. It's a little bit difficult to see because they're in shadow. We're pushing here, but you can see now this creature on top was at this angle and now has been pushed up this way because he's pushed his hips into him. So now here you can feel the hips coming down. So the hip is now contacting with the ground at this point. And so after that hip comes down, now that space that exists there, he's got some room to pull his arm into it, this arm that's on top and the arm underneath his body. So now this elbow is a post on the ground that he can press up against, and he's able to get this other arm in front of him as well to start to get this grip of the creature on top of him to kind of get pulled off of out of position so that he can't press down on him anymore. And then he's going to do the same thing again where he's going to lift up with the hips, and you can see he's pressing now off of this ankle, and we can feel this hip come off the ground again. And so he lifts up again, we feel this body react, and so the next thing he's going to do is pull this knee and use it as a knee shield here like this. Now he's pressing with his knee into the body of this character too. So he's creating a frame, embracing. So with this leg is behind the character on top here. He's pressed up with his hip and then drops his hip back down out of the way. And this space is now empty, so he has room to bring his knee around and bring it in front like this. So now he's got an even more dominant position. He's got this hand and this elbow underneath him. He's got this other one out in front to kind of block this way, and then he's got a knee shield here, and he's pressing with this knee over here. So he's able to twist his body around, start to get all of arms and legs underneath him to push, and he's created this great big open space here that he can now negotiate around inside of before this guy can push down on top of him. The other thing I want to point out here is he's also doing a similar thing to what that person was doing, framing the leg of the person who was on top of him. I've got him grabbing here now that he's got that hand free, and he's going to grab the leg of this guy here. So he's doing that because if he doesn't, this creature on top can just pull these feet back this way like this and then push his weight over on top and again use gravity and his body weight to press down on top of this guy. So if he can isolate that leg like this, he only has this one to push down on, and he can pull this guy out of position and he can no longer use his weight in that same way. So now he pulls that leg, pulls this other arm underneath him. He has this point to push up with, and he's getting his knee underneath and this foot into position, because the next thing he needs to do is to create a strong base to push from. So feet wider than the hips, this nice triangular position like this with the legs. He's got this other post here, and now instead of laying on his side like we started out with, where everything's out in front of him here and his body's sideways, he's turned his body over like this, and he has this strong pyramid shape to his body like this that he can push from. And so now from here, when I do this push, it feels believable. I can do this nice strong push with the arms, legs are out nice and wide like this, and this feels like the kind of force necessary to push the other one out of the way, whereas before I didn't have any way of doing that. So now I can use this pressure, and again I'm creating space between them after that pressure happens, so that now he can use, in a similar way like we were showing before, using space to do an attack. Now I can do that. I pushed, and now he's got room to pull his hand out of the way and do this swipe, because it's no longer pinned to the ground. So now from there that this creature is free, he can use his arms to attack. So we're going to go into some striking, like we were saying with the lions. And again, I want to have a nice wide base for that attack to happen from, and I want to use the whole body in these swipes that he's going to do with his arms. So he makes contact here with this hand, and then twists his whole body through here, and then pulls this way. And you can feel this guy's hip getting pulled like that, and it feels believable because this guy's used his whole body to twist the arm. And I'm also straightening this arm. Comes in bent like this, and then when his body twists around, that arm straightens, so we feel like it's pulling, and then we see the result of that pull in the body of the other character. And that's generally what I want. I want to feel like the body's involved, there's a pull that we can see, and then a result that happens afterwards. So this guy pulls, and then there's a bounce that happens on the hip, so another bit of follow through to that action. There's another contact here. I can see the momentum slows down here, so I can see that make contact. And then this, the body of the creature behind, is going to lean and all feel involved. He's going to twist his entire body. We can feel him pushing off this leg over here so that there is a nice line of action and a force through here. And then this pull where he pulls the other character across, and again we feel the hip move and get pulled by that hook, and then an opposing attack on the other hand through here where it makes contact, and then again pulls, and we feel the result of the body where the whole back twists when this hook pulls away.
So obviously in a shot like this where you've got combat between two characters, the interaction of the force between one driving the action of the other is crucial to making it look believable. So finding a way to simplify those things and organize them in as effective a way as possible is really helpful. In this case, I like to break it down between grappling and striking, and then make sure that I'm controlling the amount of space between those characters so that I can define which one is being dominant over the other. That's my shot breakdown. Thanks for watching.